Hi, my name is Peter Watts, and I am going to share with you for our fieldwork experience. So the fieldwork experience that I engaged in week 5 was participating in my church's family night for our middle school and high school ministry called Kaleo, which is Greek for the called out. And so we had family night at the church, and I'm the pastor of the church. And so our youth pastor and middle school, high school pastor and his team of volunteers put on our family night, and it was made up of families from our community, which is predominantly Latino and African American, and first and second generation Latino Spanish speaking as well. And we also had volunteers from different supporting churches. One church is an Asian American church, second generation Asian American church. So we had a couple of volunteers from there, and then volunteers from our partner World Impact that has missionaries who are part of our ministry at the church. And so those volunteers were there, and then we had people from the community who were volunteers and helped to lead as well. So it was really a diverse, multi-ethnic crowd, and the ages were from newborns all the way to grandparents that made up the people. And the relationships that were built and how people engage to get to know one another is through relationships, through conversation, through hanging out, knowing one another, and inviting by word of mouth. We didn't do flyers in the neighborhood. It was all by word of mouth, and we filled up the whole sanctuary with our parents, grandparents from the neighborhood who brought their kids who are not currently attending church or any kind of youth group. In our volunteers in our teen center or in our church that participate in our teen ministry, these volunteers get together and they do volunteer retreats. Leadership retreats where they go off for a weekend, and these leaders who are volunteering in our youth ministry spend time together, getting to know one another, building community, speaking truth to one another, and all of the things that form them as a Christian community. And so the setting that night was a Friday night. The setting was dim. We had dim lighting where it was dark, but there was some soft lighting to set the mood. And the food, we had a variety of food for this time together, which came from the different ethnic makeup of our community and of our church. And so we had different foods from different cultures. And so that variety that you would feel was evident in the food. And so when you walked in, you could smell the kimchi, and you can smell the pizza, and you can smell the taco seasoning, and you can just smell the different variety of foods that were there. There was soft background worship music playing in the background. We had round tables. And those round tables facilitated face-to-face, eye-to-eye discussion and hanging out and community building through that whole process during that night. And then there was also what I call inclusion of special needs students. And so I was actually sitting at a table with a family who had a daughter who was in high school, and I don't know what the disability was that she had, but it was very evident that she had a disability. She talked about being bullied at school. She talked about how bad the school was and how she wanted to be around people who would love her and accept her just as she is. A very intelligent young lady, but has a physical disability that, like I said before, that's apparent, which would cause kids to behave or treat her in an unfair and a mean way, and to not accept or include her. And so in terms of the practices that I saw taking place and I saw engaged in, was hospitality. There were greeters and volunteers making the families, the parents and the grandparents and the kids that came in to feel very welcomed into that environment. And there was also testimony, the practice of testimony. We had different kids that were previous students in our youth ministry get up to tell stories about reconciliation. They told stories about their time in our youth ministry. They talked about when they came to know Christ. They talked about the friends that they built because of this youth ministry. So there was this hospitality practice. There was also this practice of testimony. There was this practice of community formation, community and church formation. You can see that it was very evident of the kids who are part of the youth ministry and the bonds and the relationships that they've built over time since they were in middle school and now in high school. Some who were volunteering that are young adults had come up through our ministry, and now they're young adult leaders leading our middle school and high school kids. And these young adults are like best friends because they have come through this ministry and built community with one another. And then the last one, I would say it wasn't as evident, but I would say promise keeping, the practice of promise keeping, as the leaders got up to talk about what they do and their roles and the things that they said to the kids was about keeping promises to them about what God would do, how they would walk with them through hard things, of the activities that they would actually be engaged in, those fun activities that kids love to do, like the camping that we do. And so just those were the kinds of things that I would say encompass that practice of promise keeping. So as I end this video for my Fieldwork number 1, again, thank you, and I'm done.